The downturn in Oklahoma's economy has resulted in growing numbers of layoffs, especially in the energy sector. Many Oklahomans are also dealing with rising costs of medical care. An unplanned medical event can be devastating and force families into debt. But the legal system provides ways to handle those stressful times.
Well, originally our financial struggle started with my husband's change of employment or loss of employment. Although he'd been in the industry about 15 years, he went through the loss of employment, and coincidentally, I was going through a lot of detrimental health issues that caused my career to change as I had to diminish and close my stores, unable to work. So between the two together, it was totally financial, hardships that were going on.
I wanted a career change, and I went into the mortgage business. I had friends in the mortgage business, and then I thought it would be a good idea to invest in some property. So I bought 3 houses and rented them out. And, things were rocking along pretty good, and I thought, oh, this is really good. So, but then the industry kind of melted down, and one renter moved out, then the second one moved out, and it was just like a domino effect.
Medical bills. We had a lot of medical bills, and we had to decide what we was going to pay first because we needed the medical. And I figured I could be a month behind on my mortgage, and so that's what we did. We paid the medical, and I went behind a month, and then the institution called me, and they said well, we have a program we can get you into.
There are a lot of reasons people get too far into debt. It could be medical bills. In Oklahoma, it could have been the downturn of the oil business, a loss of job, a reduction in salary, or it could be as simple as a divorce proceeding that left you racked with bills. When debt becomes too much, it's really important that you don't ignore the situation and that you contact an attorney or other legal professional to assist you and tell you all the available options.
Shortly after that, I just couldn't pay the payments, so I just had to let things fall the way they were falling. And pretty soon, I got these legal papers on my porch, and that was really scary.
We knew we needed help once we hit about that third month, knowing that things were not kicking back in our finances as fast as we thought that we could. Knowing that we were continuing to get notices and that we didn't have a date set that we could actually say, this is when we can get you even a single payment. It felt like a hopeless situation. It felt embarrassing. It was not something that even we wanted our friends and family to know, but it was a situation we were in. I knew it wasn't anything we'd done wrong. It was just life was happening to us, and it was not the brighter side of life. It was a harder side of life.
They called me and told me that the program, you can't get into the program. So you make too much money to get into the program. And I said, well, you should have told me that before, 8 months ago, And they said, well, you're not in the program, we need our money back. And it was like $10,000. It was impossible for me, for us, my family. It was just impossible. And they said, well, if you don't pay it, then short sell your house. And I didn't even know what a short sale was, And they explained it, and I said, well, I'm not going to do that. And they said, well, the only other alternative is we're going to foreclose on it. And that's how I got to the bankruptcy, because I didn't want to let my house go.
We had so many medical bills coming at us, too many to pay, because we were literally making the decisions between paying medical bills, paying to keep the lights on and food in the house, or do we pay our mortgage? So we chose many times. Obviously, daily living came first, and then we chose to pay medical bills until there were too many to pay. And at that time, we ended up deciding to file bankruptcy and chose that route.
know that you have rights. There are federal and state statutes, including the Fair Debt Collection Act, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, and the Truth in Lending Act. These acts were put in place to protect consumers and prevent mortgagors or creditors from acting unfairly towards them.
My attorney explained everything to me up front, and so there were no surprises or anything. And he did recommend bankruptcy to me. And of course, that was a scary thing, but I knew in my heart that that was my only choice, that I didn't have any other choice. And I think it's real important for people to know that it doesn't just happen to a certain class of people or socioeconomic, anybody. It can happen to anybody.
Trish filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy. In a Chapter 7, all unsecured debts or debts that aren't tied to a piece of property that you own, meaning your car or your house, are discharged or forgiven, so long as the amount of assets that you have or the amount of value that you own is less than what the federal bankruptcy statutes are. I would expect a Chapter 7 bankruptcy to last approximately 6 months and then be completed at that point.
I came in and I talked to the attorney, and we discussed everything, and he said, well, Chapter 13 would be my only option, really. And in the Chapter 13, you pay off all that debt within a certain period of time, which was 5 years on my part. And it was done, I paid it all off, and we were done.
I was really relieved, and I was really thankful for the bankruptcy, actually, because it just freed me up for a new beginning in my life. And there is life after bankruptcy. So it happens, and life does get better. It's just one of those things that is a bump in the road.
I will say that Chapter 7 is the fresh start for bankruptcy or in bankruptcy, where you're going to take all of the debts that you owe, all the liabilities that you have, and you're going to assess if any of those are exempt or not exempt, with, of course, the help of the court and an attorney, and then the rest are going to be discharged or forgiven. And so it allows the person who files Chapter 7 to get a fresh start.
My opinion on bankruptcy did change over our personal experience, having to understand the situations that people do get in, that it becomes a tool that is there for the use in hardships where there are no other choices.
Me and my wife, we were just so relieved. I mean, goodness gracious alive, well, maybe you can't imagine, but you just can't imagine how relieved we were, because that was tough. But we got through it, and it made us better people, made us stronger people, made us better people, and we did good. We did good.
We have Haley Simoneau, who practices in the areas of bankruptcy, debt defense, and post-bankruptcy collection. Victor Wandrus represents consumers dealing with banks and debt collectors, including the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. And Roland V. Combs III practices in the areas of bankruptcy and mortgage foreclosure defense. Haley, what's the most common kind of debt?
I would say most of our clients that come in have one of two debts. It's either going to be medical or credit card, or small loans, or those type of things.
Victor, what options do debtors have?
Well, when dealing with a debt collector, which a lot of consumers are, in fact, I read recently the CFPB reported that 1 in every 6 of us has had a debt collector contact us within the last year. They can send a letter to the debt collector requesting verification of the debt, and the debt collector has a duty to respond in writing to that consumer.
Roland, do you have to file bankruptcy if your home is being foreclosed?
No, sir. No.
So what do you do?
You can contact the mortgage company and ask for a modification. and you can ask for it. Depending on your financial situations, you can have that note reinstated. So that's one option beside bankruptcy. Bankruptcy normally is your last option where the debtor doesn't have any financial resources and you're reorganizing his debts so that way you can keep their home, so they can keep their home.
How does loan modification work?
Loan modification works differently depending on the mortgage company and their guidelines that you're dealing with. They have a set of guidelines that they go by for purposes of determining what type of modification that you're eligible for.
What's the difference between Chapter 7 and Chapter 13?
Well, Chapter 7 is where you take all of the person's assets and you determine whether they have funds enabled to pay those off or not. And most people qualify for a Chapter 7, and it just pretty much wipes the debt out. A Chapter 13 is more along the lines of where they're going to be in a plan where they're going to pay back those debts.
Victor, when should someone consult an attorney?
Well, I guess it depends on when they feel comfortable with it. Some consumers might look at their credit reports and want to address the debt that is appearing there head on. It might be a good idea to contact an attorney then. One of the most important times, though, to contact an attorney is if the consumer has received a summons and a petition of a lawsuit. Many of these debt collectors rely on the fact that a consumer is not going to respond to the lawsuit, which means within 20 days or 30 days, the debt collector can receive a judgment without proving anything else in court. In fact, about 90% of the lawsuits that are filed result in default judgments because the consumer simply doesn't do anything. The consumer might be scared or worried that they can't afford an attorney or can't have help. And so they don't respond to the lawsuit, they don't show up in court, and they get a judgment against them, which allows the debt collector to immediately start garnishing wages and bank accounts.
Roland, why do people wait so long to deal with debt problems?
Well, I think it's a matter of they're embarrassed and don't know what to do and just needing to, they may not have the finances to be able to consult someone as far as money-wise. Number of reasons, but the bottom line is I think they need to consult someone, an attorney or other professional, so that way they can make sure that their rights are protected and they know what their options are.
Haley, what can Oklahomans do if they're confronted by an aggressive collector?
Well, there's various things that they can do. There are laws out there, FDCPA laws, and if the creditor is very aggressive and is breaking those laws, you can certainly, if you have an attorney, call them on that and hold them liable for breaking those laws.
What is illegal?
Well, the FDCPA, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, is a nationwide act that's been around since 1978, and it protects consumers against harassment, oppressive tactics, and unfairness by debt collectors when debt collectors are calling to collect a consumer debt. Things that are legal under the act include calls before a certain time or after a certain time at night. They include adding additional charges such as collection fees and attorney fees that may not be allowed by the law. It includes contact with someone else besides your spouse regarding the debt, so third-party contact. These are just some of the few specific instances of illegal contact. Essentially, it protects against anything that is not truthful, fair, or treating the consumer with dignity and respect.
What should a person do if they've been sued by a creditor?
I think they should consult an attorney very fast because, as Victor said, that initially if you don't know your rights and if you're doing nothing can create other problems.
Is there anything you can do if a judgment has been granted against you for debt?
Certainly. Now, the main thing that people are usually concerned about are garnishments. And if we contact the creditor or the creditor's attorney and set up payment arrangements or determine what would be affordable for the consumer to pay, you can certainly do that. There are also exemptions if a creditor is trying to garnish your wages or your bank account, that we can assist someone in filing for an exemption because some of that money is exempt and they can't touch it.
Thanks for your advice, Haley Semino, Roland V. Combs III, and Victor Wandrus.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks for having us.
Good to have you with us.